Hi guys, I'm Nicola McKenzie, founder, mortgage and insurance specialist here at DM Mortgages, and today's video we'll be looking at what documents you need when you apply for a mortgage. So to find out more, stay tuned. Now guys, before we get into the detail of today's video, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any future property, mortgage and finance related videos. Now I also want you to consider using DM Mortgages to arrange your next mortgage or remortgage. And to do that, you can head over to our website, which is dm.mortgage, and there you can easily book in online for a mortgage appointment with a member of our fully qualified mortgage advice team. Now, when you're applying for a mortgage in the UK, guys, you're going to need various different documents to prove things like your identity, your income and your expenses. Now, you need to remember that every single lender is going to have slightly different requirements. So it's really important to be prepared to make sure that you can get your mortgage application submitted as quickly as possible. Now, it's also worth me mentioning that there is a difference between what documents are required for an agreement in principle versus a full mortgage application. And in today's video, I am talking about what documents you need for a full mortgage application. So that's something that you'll submit when you've found a property, had an offer agreed and accepted, and you're ready to actually start the process of buying your chosen house. Because for an agreement in principle, you don't need any documents at all in some cases to get that done. However, I will point out that a good broker should still look at proof of your income and other various documents, even for an agreement in principle, because what you don't want to do, and I've seen borrowers do this, is just enter in any figures. Let's say that you go direct to a bank to get your agreement in principle. They'll often do one without any documents at all, and they're relying on what you tell them. The problem is when you actually get to a full mortgage application, they're going to want to see that income proof and all the other proofs as well. And if those figures don't stack up, then you may have a problem. So it's also important to, like I say, here at DM Mortgages, we would still require documents even for an agreement in principle, because we don't want you to waste your time applying for a mortgage that isn't going to work out when you get to full mortgage application stage. So like I mentioned, I'm talking about the documents you'll need for full mortgage application. These can vary. And it's also worth me mentioning that even though these are general documents that most lenders will ask for, or certainly we as brokers would generally ask for these documents in order to submit an application for our clients, but when you actually start the mortgage application process, underwriters can still come back and ask for more documents. And sometimes I see borrowers get frustrated by this. And the one thing I'd say is that it isn't personal. Ultimately, if you're borrowing hundreds of thousands of pounds, it's a lot of money to borrow. So lenders might need more information in order to satisfy their requirements. And it's not necessarily a bad sign because they're asking for additional documents during the application process. It's there to make sure that they're comfortable lending you what you came to borrow. So understanding what's generally required and getting these documents together before you make a mortgage application will make sure the process goes smoother, it goes quicker, and again, it would increase your chances of getting approved for that mortgage. So let's break down some of the essential documents that generally you need as a bare minimum. Now, firstly, let's look at proof of your name and proof of your residency. So often you'll need current photo ID, so a valid passport or a driver's license. Now, here at Dun & McCarthy, we can, in many cases, actually do electronic ID checks. Again, guys, we're in 2023, so electronic ID checks may suffice depending on the lender, depending on who's arranging the mortgage. But electronic ID checks might replace a passport, for example. But generally speaking, a passport or driver's license, something to prove you are who you say you are. Now, if you're living in the UK and you are not a British citizen, then you might also be asked to prove your residency status. So you might need to provide a copy of your visa, front and back, or a share code, for example. But some kind of documentation will usually be required to show that you've got the relevant permit in order to actually be in the UK and work in the UK. Now, often you'll also need proof of address, so a recent utility bill, for example, so gas, electricity or water. It has to be an official document, and it usually can't be entertainment documents or mobile phone contracts either. Now, a bank statement or a credit card bill will usually suffice, and it usually has to be dated within the last 3 months, leading up to the application. Now, lenders can typically accept either a utility bill or a bank statement to verify your current address. And I'm going to come on to bank statements later, guys, but if you're submitting bank statements, that can also class as proof of address. Similarly, when I mentioned about name ID, if you're providing a driving license in that instance, then often you don't also need to provide address ID, because obviously your driving license will show your current address. Now, this next one's a big one, proof of your income. So if you are PAYE, you're an employee, then often you'll need to provide pay slips, usually from the last 3 months leading up to the application. And if you're paid weekly, then usually a lender will want to see the last 13 weeks worth of pay slips. And the pay slips should show your name, your employer's name, your pay date, your net and your gross pay. Maybe you might even need to submit more pay slips if you are relying on bonuses in order to get the mortgage. So for example, if you get an annual bonus, then a lender will probably also want to see the pay slip from the year before that shows that bonus being evidenced. Now, if you're self-employed, then you'll need to show tax return forms. So that's SA 302s is the technical term, and the accompanying what's called tax year overviews that go along with the SA 302s. The tax year overview will show how much tax you've had to pay in that particular tax year. Now, usually most lenders will need to see these documents spanning over the last 2 years leading up to the application. Some lenders, very few, but some might only ask for 1 year's proof, and some might even go as far as 3 years proof. But generally speaking, the last 2 years worth of tax returns or SA 302s, you'll need to evidence with your mortgage application. Now, you might also need company accounts if you are a limited company director. Again, it would be spanning from the last 2 years, generally speaking, depending on the lender. Now, if you're relying on, again, other sources of income, guys, in order to get this mortgage, so if part of your affordability assessment you've had to include child benefits or bonuses, overtime commission, then again, you're probably going to need additional documents to satisfy that that income is legitimate. So if you're relying on overtime commission and bonuses, then you often will be asked to also provide a P60, or, like I said earlier, additional pay slips to show where those bonuses were paid and the months that they were paid. Now, if you're relying on state pensions or other state benefits, then you'll often be required to show and to demonstrate the most recent DWP letter, for example, as well. As a viewer of this channel, I assume that you're considering purchasing a property in the near future. So it's important for you to know that DM Mortgages are an award-winning team of fully qualified mortgage brokers that provide advice to clients all over the UK. Now, we spend countless hours making free content for YouTube and other social media platforms to help to give you guys sound and useful information to make sure that you're in the best position to make informed decisions. To support this channel when the time comes for you to consider your mortgage options, we want you to book a free online mortgage appointment with a member of our fully qualified mortgage advice team. Because without your help and support, keeping this channel going simply isn't possible. Now, we searched thousands of mortgage products from high street and specialist lenders to find the right deal for your circumstances. And we also provide a free will writing service to every DM client. So head over to dm.mortgage and book in for a free mortgage appointment when the time comes. And also make sure that you subscribe to this channel if you find the content useful. But for now, let's get back to the video. Now, next, you'll also need to usually provide proof of your expenses. So what are you spending each month? And usually this can be evidenced using bank statements. So again, in most cases, you'll need to show at least 3 months worth of bank statements from usually all of your current accounts, detailing regular expenses. So things like subscriptions, school fees, childcare, travel costs, your day-to-day expenses. Because again, a lender or a broker, we certainly, again, to make sure that we're doing our due diligence properly, will need to see how you're managing your finances and how you're spending, how you're dealing with your day-to-day expenses, shall I say. So usually in most cases, 3 months bank statements leading up to the application is required. Now, you'll also usually need to provide documents to show proof of deposit, and that can usually be done, again, showing a bank statement, evidencing that you've got those deposit funds there, but also showing that deposit building up over a period of time. Often, again, some lenders will want to see the build up if those savings are coming from, or if that deposit even is coming from personal savings. Again, solicitors often want to see the build up of funds as well. Now, it's also worth me mentioning, if to prove your deposit, or if your deposit even is coming from a gift, family member, for example, then usually you'll need to provide a letter from the person that's gifting you that deposit. And again, the requirements that need to go in that letter might vary depending on the lender, but ultimately you will need some kind of confirmation from that person that's gifting you the money to say that they are happy to gift it. Now, on a final note, there's a few other things I want you to remember. Most lenders are happy with electronic copies of documents. So again, guys, we're in 2023, often you don't have to, depending on what the document is, but often you don't have to send or use the actual, postal versions of bank statements. PDFs downloaded from your current account website are often usually acceptable. Now, one thing that I will bear in mind, or will let you know, is that screenshots are not usually fine. So when you've got your mobile phone and you just take a picture of it and it's got like the battery symbol in the top corner of the screen, usually a bank isn't going to be happy with that. So screenshots often can create problems, okay? It's much better to make sure that you've got actual PDF downloads of documents. And that includes your pay slips as well. Now, I'd also say make sure that the information that you're providing is consistent. Review the documents before you send them to us, before you send them to the lender. And what I mean by this is that if your pay slips show that your name and address, your address is an old address that you used to live at, but then your bank statements are showing something different, then again, that can create delays and problems. So it's always a good idea to make sure that your address is matched across all of your documents and that it's reflecting the current address that you're intending to put on the application, okay? It's also worth me mentioning that sometimes employers' references are required. Again, this is, I'd say, usually in the minority of cases. But for example, if you're currently on maternity leave and you're planning to go back to work, then usually a lender's fine to take your usual salary. But in that scenario, they'd usually want a reference from your employer to say, that you're going back, the date you're returning to work, and what hours and what income you'll be returning on. So in summary, guys, keep in mind that every lender has different requirements. It can vary, and that's why it's so important to make sure you're working with a good mortgage broker like DM Mortgages, because we can guide you through the process, match you to the right lender, and ultimately improve your chances of being secured for a mortgage with favourable terms. So leave comments in the comments section, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and if you are at the point where you are considering buying a property, then head over to our website, dm.mortgage, and there you can book in for a mortgage appointment with a member of our mortgage advice team. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.